Hello everyone, here is Afrasyab. Today we are going to solve Cambridge IGCSE Physics Paper 2 Multiple Choice Extended held on October-November 2017 and paper code is 0625 with variant 23. So let's start from question number 1. Question number 1. A measuring cylinder contains some water. A small metal block is slowly lowered into the water and it then removed. Finally, a piece of the plastic is attached to the metal block and the metal block is again slowly lowered into the water. The diagram shows the measuring cylinder at each stage of this process. What is the volume of the piece of plastic? First of all, there is measuring cylinder that is filled with water. In the second diagram, we place metal block, and in the third diagram, we place again metal block along with plastic also. In the first diagram, we can see that the measuring cylinder is filled with the water and the volume of the water inside this is 55 cubic centimeter. So I write here volume of the water is equal to 55 cubic centimeter. In the diagram 2, when the metal block is also placed inside this measuring cylinder, then the volume increases and it becomes 70 cubic centimeter. So I write here volume of the water plus volume of the block. It is equal to 70 cubic centimeter. From here, volume of the block will be equal to 70 minus 55, which is equal to 15 cubic centimeter, because the volume of water is 55 cubic centimeter. In the diagram 3, again when the plastic is also placed inside this measuring cylinder, then the volume is 80 cubic centimeter. So I write here volume of water plus volume of the block, which is metal block, plus volume of the plastic. It is equal to 80 cubic centimeter. Next we have to find out the volume of the plastic. So I write here volume of plastic is equal to 80 minus volume of the water minus volume of the block. This will be equal to 80 minus volume of water is 55 minus the volume of the block is 15. So that the volume of plastic is equal to 10 cubic centimeter. Now we see the options. Option A 10 cubic centimeter, B 25 cubic centimeter, C 70 cubic centimeter and D 80 cubic centimeter. From here, option A is correct. Question number 2. 4 balls with different masses are dropped simultaneously from the heights shown. Air resistance may be ignored. Which ball hits the floor first? So which one of the following ball hits the floor first? We know that second equation of motion, H is equal to VIT plus half GT square. Here Vi is the initial speed at the top when the height is maximum. Here speed is equal to 0. So this term will be equal to 0 and H will be equal to half GT square. From here T will be equal to square root of 2H over G. The heights of different balls are given. We just put the values in this formula and find out the time. First of all, I consider ball A. Time for the ball A will be equal to 2 multiplied by height, which is 0.5 divided by 10. This will be equal to 0.3 second. For the ball B, height is given, which is 1.0 meter. So I write here 2 multiplied by 1.0 divided by 10. This will be equal to 0.4 second. For the ball C, time will be 2 multiplied by height, which is 1.5 meter, divided by 10. This will be equal to 0.5 seconds. For the ball D, here is 2 multiplied by 2.0 divided by 10. So time will be equal to 0.6 second. Now we see here that time is smallest for the ball A. It means that ball A hits the floor first. From here, option A is correct. Question number 3. The diagram shows the vertical forces acting on the ball as it falls vertically through the air. The ball does not reach terminal velocity. Here we can see that there is a ball and upward there is a force of air resistance, while downward there is a force of weight. Which row describes what happened to the resultant force on the ball and what happens to the acceleration of the ball as it falls through the air? The ball does not attain terminal velocity. We have to explain what is the effect on the resultant force and acceleration of the ball before attaining the terminal velocity. So first of all, we can see here in this diagram as the ball is falling downward, its speed increases. With the increase in speed, there is a force that is acting in upward direction, which is air resistance. With the increase in speed, air resistance also increase. So the net force will be weight minus force due to air resistance. As the air resistance force increase, then the net force should decrease. And we know that according to Newton's second law of motion, F is equal to ma. When the net force decrease, acceleration should be decrease. Now we see the options. Resultant force and acceleration. Option A, decreases, decreases. B, decreases, increases. C, increases, decreases. D, increases, increases. From here, option A is correct because both of these resultant forces and acceleration are decreasing. Question number 4. A spring is stretched by hanging a piece of metal from it. There is a spring and we have attached a metal with this spring. Which name is given to the force that stretches the spring? Option A, friction. B, mass. C, pressure. D, weight. So this force is basically the weight that stretches the spring. From here, option D is correct. Question number 5. On the moon, all objects fall with the same acceleration. Which statement explains this? Option A. On the moon, all objects have the same weight. B. The moon has a smaller gravitational field strength than the Earth. C. Weight of the object is directly proportional to the mass. D. The weight of the object is inversely proportional to its mass. First of all, we can see here the acceleration is same. It is not changing. And we know that weight is equal to product of mass and gravitational field strength. When the value of G is not changing, it is constant. It means that weight is directly proportional to mass. From here, option C is correct, which shows that the weight of the object is directly proportional to its mass. Question number 6. A pair of cutters is used to cut a rope. Where should the rope be positioned and at which labeled point should the hands be positioned to produce the greatest cutting force? Rope positioned, hands positioned. Option A, P and R. B, P and S. C, Q and R. D, Q and S. First of all, we see this diagram. Here different points are shown. Here is R, S, Q and P. This is pivot point. So the distance between the pivot point and the point S, it is larger as compared to the distance between pivot point and R. It means that more torque will be produced by using the scissor from the position X. Because we know that torque is equal to R cross F. It is the product of the force and the distance from the pivot point to the line of action of force. So torque will be maximum only when we consider distance S, not the distance from R. Next, the rope should be positioned at point Q. Because we are placing the rope at the point Q, rope will be cut by a small torque force. Now we see the options. From here, option D is correct, which shows that rope should be positioned at Q and hand should be positioned at S. Question number 7. The lamp in the diagram is not very stable and falls over easily. Which row shows changes that would definitely make the lamp more stable? So first of all, in this diagram we can see that there is a lamp. There is base of this lamp, stem and shade. We have to do some changing so that this should be in more stable position. To get more stability, the center of gravity should be lower. If we lower the center of gravity, this lamp will gain stability. Next, we also have to widen the base. If the base is wider, the lamp will be in more stable position. Now we see the options. Base and center of gravity. Option A, narrow and higher. B, narrow and lower. C, wider and higher. D, wider and lower. From here, option D is correct because base should be wider and center of gravity should be lower. Question number 8. The diagram shows an incomplete scale trying to find the resultant of two 10 Newton forces acting at a point in the direction shown. What is the magnitude of the resultant force? So here we have to find out the magnitude of the resultant force. Here in this diagram we can see that there are two forces, 10 Newton and 10 Newton. The resultant will be the diagonal line. Now I am going to draw the resultant here. So this factor is the resultant of both of these forces. I represent it with R. We also have to find out the magnitude of the resultant force. R is equal to square root F1 square plus F2 square plus 2F1 F2 cos theta. Here F1 is 10 Newton and also F2 is equal to 10 Newton. This theta is basically the angle between both of these forces, which is equal to 45 degree. Now I am going to put values here. Resultant will be equal to F1 is 10 square plus 10 square plus 2 multiplied by 10 again multiply by 10 and cos of 45 degree. I take power 1 by 2. So that resultant will be equal to 18 Newton. Now we see the options. Option A 7.5 Newton, B 8.6 Newton, C 18 Newton. So from here option C is correct. Question number 9. An object has a mass of 60 kg. It accelerates from 50 meter per second to 20 meter per second when a resultant force of 300 Newton acts on it. For how long does the force act? So here we have to find out the time when mass and speed is given. Also the resultant force is given. So here I use the concept that force is equal to rate of change of momentum, that is delta P over T. From here we have to find out the value of time. So T will be equal to delta P over F. Delta P is the change in momentum. So change in momentum will be mass multiplied by delta V over F. Now I am going to put values here. Time will be equal to mass is 60 kg multiplied by change in velocity, which is 50 minus 20, which is equal to 30 meter per second, divided by force 300 Newton. So time will be equal to 6.0 second. Now we see the options. Option A 0.071 second, B 0.1 second, C 6.0 second. So C option is correct from here. Question number 10. A car starting from rest at position X accelerates up a hill. The car reaches a speed of 10 meter per second at position Y. The kinetic energy of the car at the position Y is equal to its gain in gravitational potential energy from X to Y. Take the gravitational field strength G to be 10 Newton per kilogram. What is the gain in kinetic energy of the car between X and Y? So here we have to find out height when the gravitational field strength and speed is given. First of all, as the car moves, it loses its kinetic energy and gain potential energy as it moves from point X to Y. So I write here loss of kinetic energy is equal to gain in potential energy. Kinetic energy is half mv square. This will be equal to potential energy, which is mgh. So this m cancels by this and h will be equal to v square over 2g. Now I am going to put values here. V is given 10. So there will be 10 square divided by 2 multiplied by 10. H will be equal to 5 meter. Now we see the options. Option A 0.50 meter, B 5.0 meter, C 10 meter, D 50 meter. From here option B is correct. Question number 11. A 150 watt filament lamp has an efficiency of 10%. A 40 watt compact fluorescent lamp has an efficiency of 30%. Each lamp is switched on for the same amount of time. Which lamp produces more light and which lamp converts more energy into other form of energy? Produces more light, converts more energy into other forms. Option A CFL lamp, CFL lamp. B CFL lamp, filament lamp. C filament lamp, CFL lamp. D filament lamp, filament lamp. First of all, here efficiency is given and also power is given. We have to find out the output power. So I write here for filament lamp, efficiency is equal to output power divided by input power. Here efficiency is 10%. So I write here 10 divided by 100. This will be equal to output power divided by input power is given, that is 150 watt. So I write here 150. So power output will be equal to 10 multiplied by 150 divided by 100. This will be equal to 15 watt. Next, we also have to find out the power output for the compact fluorescent lamp. So I write here for compact fluorescent lamp. Efficiency is given 30%. So there will be 30 over 100. This will be equal to power output divided by input power is 40. From here, output power will be equal to 30 multiplied by 40 divided by 100. So the power output will be equal to 12 watt. I write here is equal to 12 watt. Now we can see from here that the power output is larger for the filament lamp as compared to the compact fluorescent lamp. And we also know that power is actually rate of transfer of energy. It means that more energy produced by the filament lamp as compared to the compact fluorescent lamp. And also it converts more energy into other forms of energy. From here, option D is correct. Question number 12. A student runs up a flight of stairs. Which information is not needed to calculate the rate at which the student is doing work against gravity? So here we have to find out the rate at which the student is doing work against gravity. This rate is basically equal to power. Power is equal to work over time. Work is basically equal to gravitational potential energy in this case. So I write here gravitational potential energy divided by time. Gravitational potential energy is equal to mgh and here is time. We also know that weight is equal to product of mass and gravitational field strength. So I write here power is equal to weight multiplied by height divided by time. Now we see the options. Option A, the height of the flight of stairs. B, the length of the flight of stairs. C, the time taken to run up the stairs. D, the weight of the student. So which thing is not needed in order to calculate the power? Here in the formula of power, weight, height and time is required. Weight is given in the D option, height is given in A and in the option C, time is also given. It means that we don't need length in order to calculate the rate at which the student is doing work against gravity. From here, option C is correct. Question number 13. The diagram shows a simple mercury barometer. Here is a mercury barometer. Which length is used to find the value of the atmospheric pressure? So in order to find the value of the atmospheric pressure, which length is used? First of all, in this diagram we can see that there is also given a meter rule. So we can easily find out the length. Here length will be equal to the level of the mercury inside this tube. So I write here length is equal to level of mercury we observe that this top point is at 86 centimeter while this bottom point it is at 12 centimeter. So level will be 86 minus 12 which is equal to 74 centimeter. It means that length is equal to 74 centimeter that is used to find out the value of the atmospheric pressure. From here, option B is correct. Question number 14. A pollen grain in a beaker of still water is viewed through a microscope. Which diagram shows the most likely movement of the pollen grain? So the pollen grain movement is random. In the option A, random movement is shown. The pollen grain move in any direction. In the option B, C and D, there is regular pattern for the motion of the pollen grain. It means that from here, option A is correct. Question number 15. The diagram shows an air-filled rubber toy. A child sits on the toy and its volume decreases. The temperature of the air in the toy does not change. So here temperature is constant and the volume decreases. How does the air pressure in the toy change and why? Pressure and reason. Option A, decreases, air molecules move more slowly. B, decreases, air molecules strike the rubber less frequently. C, increases, air molecules move more quickly. D, increases, air molecules strike the rubber more frequently. First of all, here the temperature is constant. I write here and volume decrease. Then according to Boyle's law, pressure is inversely proportional to volume. When the volume decrease, pressure should be increased. But here temperature should be constant. Now the air pressure here increases. We also have to explain its reason. Because when the volume decreases, air molecule strikes the rubber more frequently, due to which the air pressure increases. From here, option D is correct. Question number 16. The diagram shows a glass flask sealed with a small volume of the mercury in a glass tube. When the flask is gently warmed, the mercury rises up the tube. What is the main cause of the movement of the mercury? Option A, expansion of the air in the beaker. B, expansion of the glass flask. C, expansion of the glass tube. D, expansion of the mercury. So first of all, there will be the expansion of the air in the flask. Due to the thermal expansion of the air, mercury rises up. From here, option A is correct. Question number 17. Which property cannot be used for the measurement of temperature? Option A, half-life of the radioactive isotope. B, length of a solid metal bar. C, pressure of the gas. D, volume of the liquid. So first of all, we know that general gas equation PV is equal to nRT. Here P is pressure, V is volume, R is general gas constant and T is temperature. Here we can see that pressure and volume, both of these depends upon the temperature. It means that option C and D, these are incorrect. The length of the solid bar magnet also depends upon the temperature. So only the half-life of the radioactive isotope cannot be used for the measurement of the temperature because half-life is a random process and it is independent of the temperature. From here, option A is correct. Question number 18. A student uses an immersion heater to heat some water in a beaker. The water is heated from 20 degrees C to 80 degrees C. The energy supplied to the water is 60.0 kilojoule. What is the thermal capacity of the water? Ignore any heat loss. So here we have to find out the thermal capacity when the heat supplied and temperature increase is given. Here I use the formula that E is equal to C delta T, where E is the energy supplied, C is thermal capacity and delta T is increase in temperature. So C will be equal to E over delta T. Here heat is given 60.0 kilojoule. So I write here 60.0 multiplied by 10 की power 3 joule divided by change in temperature. It will be 80 minus 20 degrees C. So C will be equal to 1000 joule per degree C. Now we see the options. Option A, 667 joule per degree C. B, 750 joule per degree C. C, 1000 joule per degree C. D, 3000 joule per degree C. From here, option C is correct. Question number 19. Why is the heating coil of the domestic immersion heater placed at the bottom of the tank? Option A. Cold water is less dense than the hot water and therefore sinks. Option B. Cold water is more dense than the hot water and therefore rises. C. Hot water is less dense than the cold water and therefore rises. D. Hot water is more dense than the cold water and therefore sinks. So the hot water rises because the density of the hot water is smaller as compared to the cold water. This is given in the option C, that the hot water is less dense than the cold water and therefore rises. So option C is correct from here. Question number 20. The diagram represents the plane wavefronts of the water wave about to strike a solid barrier. Which diagram shows the position of the wavefront after reflection at the barrier? So this wavefront strikes the barrier and then reflect back. We have to show the position of the wavefronts after reflection at the barrier. First of all, I draw the normal on this solid barrier. This is normal line to this surface. Next, I consider that one wavefront reaches the solid barrier. Now I am going to draw its position. So I consider that this is the wavefront that reaches the solid barrier. According to the laws of reflection, the angle of incidence must be equal to the angle of reflection. Angle of incidence is the angle that is made between the normal line and the incident wavefront. So this angle is basically equal to angle of incidence. Next, the wavefront should be reflected in such a way that angle of reflection will be equal to angle of incidence. Now I am going to draw the reflected wavefront. So the ray will be reflected in this direction, that is horizontally. Now we see the options. In the option A, the reflected ray are vertical. So option A is incorrect. Option B is also incorrect. In the option C, we see that the wavefronts are horizontal. So option C is correct from here. Question number 21. The diagram shows a ray of light in the glass. The ray reaches boundary with air. One weak ray of the light is missing from the diagram. Which statement is correct? Option A. At the boundary, the speed of light will become less. B. Critical angle for the light at this boundary is 50 degree. C. The diagram shows an example of the diffraction of the light. D. The missing ray is a weak reflected ray. Here we can see that angle is given 50 degree. So the angle of incidence here will be 90 minus 50 degree, which is equal to 40 degree. So some part of the light is reflected back to the medium for the interface of two medium. This happens only when the angle of incidence is greater than the critical angle. And this phenomena is known as total internal reflection. It means that this missing ray is weak reflected ray. From here, option D is correct. Question number 22. Light traveling in the air enters a plastic block at an angle of incidence of 60 degrees. The plastic has a refractive index of 1.48. What is the angle of refraction? So here we have to find out the angle of refraction when the angle of incidence and the refractive index is given. Here we use the Snell's law, that n is equal to sin I over sin r. So I write here n, which is the refractive index. It is the ratio of sin of angle of incidence divided by sin of angle of refraction. Here we have to find out angle r. So I write here sin of r will be equal to sine of angle of incidence divided by n. So R will be equal to sine inverse of sine of angle of incidence. Here the angle of incidence is given 62 degree. So I write here 62 degree divided by n. N is 1.48. So the angle of refraction will be equal to 37 degrees. Now we see the options. Option A 18 degree, B 28 degree, C 37 degree. From here option C is correct. Question number 23. A sound wave travels from a medium in one state into the same medium but in another state. This causes the speed of wave to change from approximately 300 meter per second to approximately 3000 meter per second. Between which two states is the sound wave traveling? Option A, gas to solid, B, liquid to gas, C, liquid to solid, D, solid to liquid. So first of all, the speed of sound is larger in the solid as compared to the speed of sound in the gases and liquid. I write here, speed of sound is larger in the solid as compared to the speed of sound in the liquid. This is even greater as compared to the speed of sound in the gas. The speed of sound in the solid is approximately 3000 meter per second. In the liquid, it is approximately 1500 meter per second. And in the gas, it is 300 meter per second. Now here, the speed changes from 300 meter per second to 3000 meter per second. It means that the state will be from gas to solid. Now we see the option. In the option A, it is given that gas to solid. So option A is correct from here. Question number 24. The moon is 380,000 km from the earth. A laser light beam is directed from the earth to the moon. The beam is reflected back to the earth. How long does it take for the light to travel to the moon and back to the earth? First of all, I consider here that earth is here and moon is here. A laser light is directed from earth to the moon. So first of all, laser light is going in this direction and then it is reflected back to the earth. Then it comes back towards the earth. It means that if the distance between the earth and moon is d, then this laser light covers double distance, which is equal to 2d. So I write here d prime is equal to 2d. Also we know that V is equal to d by t. So I write here V is equal to d prime by t. Here d prime is equal to 2d over t. So t will be equal to 2d over v. I am going to put values here. 2 multiplied by distance, which is 380,000 multiplied by 10 की power 3 meters divided by v. V is 3.0 into 10 की power 8 meter per second, which is the speed of light. So there will be 3.0 into 10 की power 8 meter per second. So that time t is equal to 2.53 second. Now we see the options. Option A 1.27 millisecond, B 2.53 millisecond, C 1.27 millisecond, D 2.53 second. From here, option D is correct. Question number 25. Which statement about the radio waves is correct? Option A. They are used in the television remote controllers. B. They can be detected by the human eye. C. They travel as longitudinal wave. D. They have the same speed in the vacuum as ultraviolet waves. As the radio waves lies in electromagnetic spectrum, and all the waves in the electromagnetic spectrums are transverse and they move with the same speed. It means that the radio waves will have the same speed in the vacuum as that of the ultraviolet wave. So D option is correct from here. Question number 26. The diagram shows the earth and its surroundings, through which labeled region can sound not be transmitted. So there are different regions A, B, C and D. A is seawater, B is land like rocks, C is atmosphere and here is air, D is outer space which is known as vacuum. So sound wave is basically the longitudinal wave. It required any medium for its propagation. Here in the vacuum there is nothing, it is empty. So the sound waves cannot be traveled through the vacuum. It means the region in which the sound cannot be transmitted. It is outer space. So D option is correct from here. Question number 27. Different waves travel through the air. Which wave has the greatest difference in speed? Option A, ultrasound wave and the sound waves. B, ultrasound waves and ultraviolet waves. C, ultraviolet waves and light waves. D, ultraviolet waves and radio waves. So first of all, we know that as the wave travel, frequency remains same, and according to relation V is equal to F lambda, V is directly proportional to wavelength. Where the wavelength is larger, the speed will be larger. If the difference of the wavelength is larger, then the difference in the speed will be larger. Now I am going to write the wavelength range for all of these waves. I write here wavelength. First of all, for the ultrasound, wavelength is 1.9 cm or less. For sound wave, wavelength is ranging from 17 meters to 17 millimeter. For the ultraviolet light, wavelength range is 10 की power minus 8 meter, and for radio wave, wavelength is 10 की power plus 3 meter, and for the light wave, wavelength is 10 की power minus 6 meter. Clearly we can see from here that the difference in the wavelength is larger for the ultrasound wave, which is 1.9 cm, and ultraviolet wave, that is 10 की power minus 8 meter. It means that the difference in the speed will be larger for ultrasound wave and for ultraviolet wave. So option B is correct from here. Question number 28. A train of steel nails and a train of iron nails hang from a strong magnet. The trains are then carefully removed from the magnet. What happens to the train? Option A, both trains fall apart. B, both trains stay together. C, only the train of the iron nails falls apart. D, only the train of the steel nail falls apart. Here we can see that there are two trains. First of all, here is train of steel nails, and second there is train of iron nails. Train of the iron nails fall apart as the iron act as a temporary magnet. But the train of the steel nails does not fall apart as the steel act as a permanent magnet. From here, option C is correct, which shows that only the train of the iron nails falls apart. Question number 29. What is the best method to demagnetize a steel rod? Here we have to demagnetize a steel rod. Option A, pass the rod through a coil connected to the AC supply. B, pass the rod through a coil connected to the DC supply. C, Place the rod next to another magnet. D. Stroke the rod with another magnet. So here we have to demagnetize the steel bar. So here we have to demagnetize a steel rod. For the demagnetization of the steel rod, we use AC supply, not the DC supply. It means that we have to pass the rod through a coil that is connected to the AC supply. From here, option A is correct. Question number 30. There is a current in a metal wire. Which particles in the wire move to cause this current? Option A, alpha particles, B, electrons, C, neutrons, D, protons. Because of the movement of the electron, there is a current in the metal wire. From here, option B is correct. Question number 31. The diagram shows a circuit with a gap between points P and Q. 4 pieces of the metal wire of the same material are connected in turn between points P and Q in the circuit. The table gives the diameters and the lengths of the wire, in which wire the current is largest. So for which one of the following wire the current is larger? Current is larger for the wire that has smaller resistance. It means that resistance should be smaller. We also know that resistance is equal to resistivity, length over area, where area is equal to pi r square and radius r, it is half of the diameter. So area will be equal to pi d square by 4. So I write here 4 resistivity length over pi d square. Here we can see that resistance is directly proportional to length and it is inversely proportional to diameter square. When the resistance is smaller, it means that length should be smaller and diameter should be large. So I write here length small and diameter is large. Now we see the options. Diameter and length. Option A 0.10 1.0, B 0.10 2.0, C 0.20 1.0, D 0.20 2.0. Here the length is smaller, which is 1.0, which is given in option A and C. Diameter is larger for C and D. From here we can easily guess that the current will be larger for the wire C, for which the diameter is larger and length is smaller. So C option is correct from here. Question number 32. A battery is connected to a circuit. It is switched on for 1.0 minute. During that time, there is a current of 0.40 ampere in the circuit and the battery supplies a total of 48 joule of energy. Which row gives the charge that passes and the electromotive force EMF of the battery? So here we know that power is equal to E by T, which is the rate of transfer of energy, and also power is the product of current and electromotive force. So I write here I multiplied by V. As the left hand side is equal, so the right hand side must be equal. So I write here E over T, it will be equal to IV. So V will be equal to E over I multiplied by T. Here energy is given, which is 48 joule divided by current 0.40 ampere multiplied by time. Time is 1.0 minutes, which is equal to 60 seconds. So EMF V will be equal to 2 volt. Next we have to find out the charge. We know that current is the rate of flow of charges, which is Q by T. So Q will be equal to I multiplied by T. Current is given 0.40 multiplied by time, which is 60 seconds. So that charge Q will be equal to 24 coulomb. Now we see the options. Option A, here is charge 0.40, EMF is 2.0. B, 0.40 120, C 24 2.0, D 24 120. From here option C is correct because the charge that passes in 1 minute is 24 coulomb while the EMF of the battery is 2.0 volt. Question number 33. Identical cells and identical resistors are used to make the circuit shown. In the circuit 1, the ammeter reads 2.0 ampere. What is the ammeter reading in circuit 2? So here we have to find out the value of the current in the circuit 2 that is read by the ammeter. First of all, in the first circuit we can see that there is a cell and there is a single resistor. Ammeter is used for the measurement of the current. Here I use Ohm's law. V is equal to IR and R is equal to V over I, or we can simply say I is equal to V over R. As the current is given 2.0 ampere, so I write here 2.0 ampere. For the circuit 2, here we can see that there are two identical cells and there are also two resistors. It means that here V will be equal to 2V and we have to find out the total resistance of this circuit. So as both of these resistors are connected in parallel, I use here formula 1 over R is equal to 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2. This R is the total resistance of the circuit. This will be equal to 1 over R total, 1 over R plus 1 over R. From here, there will be R square, R plus R, which is equal to 2R over R square. So total resistance will be equal to R by 2. Here again I use Ohm's law. V is equal to IR. In the case of circuit 2, V is equal to 2V. Current I write as it is and R, it is equal to R by 2. So this will be equal to 4V is equal to IR. Now I am going to put the value here. 4V over R, this is equal to I. From the circuit 1, V over R, this is equal to 2.0. So I write here 4 multiplied by 2.0. This is equal to current, which is equal to 8.0 ampere. From here, option D is correct. Question number 34. The diagram shows a circuit with a fixed resistor connected in series with a thermistor and an ammeter. Which row shows how the temperature changes affect the resistance of the thermistor and the current in the circuit? Here is temperature, resistance of the thermistor and current in the circuit. First of all, I suppose that the temperature increases. Then what will happen? In this circuit, this is fixed resistor while the other component is thermistor. By increasing the temperature, the resistance of the thermistor decreases. The resistance of thermistor decreases because the thermistor shows the negative temperature coefficient. When the resistance of the thermistor decreases, thermistor and fixed resistor, both of these connected in series, the overall total resistance of the circuit decreases. When the total resistance decreases, then the current in the circuit increases. So current will increase. On the other hand, when temperature decreases, what will happen? The resistance of the thermistor increase. When the resistance of the thermistor increase, then the total resistance of the circuit should be increased. By increasing the total resistance of the circuit, the current in the circuit decreases. Now we see the option. Option A, temperature decreases, resistance decrease, which is not possible. So option A is incorrect. B, temperature decreases, resistance increases and current decreases. So option B is correct from here, which is the case when we decrease the temperature. Question number 35. The diagram shows an AND gate and OR gate connected together. Which combination of the inputs X, Y and Z gives an output 0? So first of all, there are different combinations of the inputs X, Y and Z. First of all, we consider option A. Here X is 0, Y is 0 and Z is 1. So I write here 0, 0 and 1. First of all, here is AND gate and this is OR gate. In the AND gate, we say that if both of the inputs are high, the output will be high. Otherwise, the output will be low. So here 0 and 0, both of these are the low inputs. It means that output will be low, which is equal to 0. Next, in the OR gate, we say that if any one of the input is high, the output will be high. Otherwise, if both of the inputs are low, the output will be low. Here 0 comes here and the input of Z comes here. 0 and 1 when combined by the OR gate here will be 1. So this option is incorrect because we have take the output 0, but here output is 1. Now we check the other. Combination. Option D. Here X is 0, Y is 1 and Z is 1. When 0 and 1 combines by the AND gate, here will be output 0. And this one comes here as it is. Again 0 and 1 combines by the OR gate, here will be output 1. It means that option B is also incorrect. Next we check the option C. In the option C, X is 1, Y is 0 and Z is 0. When 1 and 0 combined by the AND gate, here will be output 0. When 0 comes here as it is, 0 and 0 combines by the OR gate, here will be output 0. It means that the combination that gives the output 0 is given in option C. So option C is correct from here. Question number 36. The diagram shows a short-circuited copper wire swinging about an axis at a right angle to the strong magnetic field. The motion induces a current in the coil. What is the effect, if any, of this induced current on the coil? This is actually related with the Lenz's law. Lenz's law states that the direction of the induced EMF in the coil is always directed against the change that causes it. Now we see the options. Option A. The induced current has no effect on the movement of the coil. This is incorrect. B. The induced current produces a magnetic field of constant magnitude in the coil. So the magnitude of the magnetic field is not constant. So option B is also incorrect. C. The induced current produces force that assists the change causing it. This is also incorrect. Option D. The induced current produces the force that opposes the change causing it. So D option is correct according to Lenz's law. Question number 37. Diagram 1 shows a magnet being pushed into a coil that is connected to a center zero galvanometer. In the diagram 1, we can see that the magnet is pulling towards the coil and there is also a galvanometer that is attached with the coil. The needle of the galvanometer deflects towards left. Which row shows the direction of the pointer when the magnet is as shown in diagram 2 and 3? So first of all, in the diagram 2, we can see here that magnet is stationary and it is inside the coil. So when the magnet is stationary, there is no change in the flux. When there is no change in the flux, the induced current will be 0. It means that the position of the needle will be at 0. In the diagram 3, we can see here that the magnet is coming out of the coil. The motion is opposite to that of the diagram in 1. This causes the induced current in the opposite direction. So here the needle of the galvanometer will be deflected in the opposite direction, which is towards the right. Now we see the options. Option A, here the diagram 2 and 3, both of these are incorrect. B, the needle of the diagram 2 is straight, and also the needle in the diagram 3, it is also straight at 0. This is also incorrect. In the option C, this is the correct representation of the needles of the galvanometer according to diagram 2 and 3. So C option is correct from here. Question number 38. Radioactive carbon-14 decays to nitrogen-14 by the emission of a particle. Which particle has been emitted in this process? So here we can see that carbon atomic number is 6 while the mass number is 14. And there is also nitrogen with atomic number 7 and mass number 14. In this reaction there is increase in atomic number by the factor of 1. So there is particle, beta particle, that is just like electron, whose atomic number is -1 and mass number is 0. So this particle will be electron, so that the atomic number and mass number on both of these sides should be conserved. Now we see the options. Option A, a beta particle. B, an alpha particle. C, a neutron. D, a proton. So this is beta particle. Option A is correct from here. Question number 39. As the alpha particles pass through the electric field between two charged plates, they are deflected downward. What happens to the gamma rays passing through the same electric field? As we know that alpha particles are charged particle and it is positively charged, while the gamma rays are neutral. They don't carry any charge. It means that gamma rays cannot be deflected through the electric field. Now we see the options. Option A, they are deflected downwards more than the alpha particles. B, they are deflected upwards. C, they are not deflected at all. D, they follow the same path as that of the alpha particle. So gamma rays cannot be deflected at all. They go straight. From here, option C is correct. Question number 40. Radioactive iodine-131 emits beta particle and has a half-life of 8 days. It decays to produce xenon-131. Which statement about this decay is correct? Option A, after 8 days, no more beta particles are emitted. B, after 8 days, the number of xenon-131 atoms have halved. Option C, after 16 days, the iodine-131 has decayed completely. D, after 16 days, the number of iodine-131 atoms has reduced to 1/4. So first of all, half-life is given, that is 8 days. When the first half-life passes, it means that 8 days pass. What will happen? The amount remain half. If I say that the number of atoms present originally is N0, then after the first half-life, they will be N0/2. When the second half-life passes, that is 16 days pass, then half of this amount will remain. So it will be 1/2 N0/2. This will be N0/4. This amount remains after 16 days. Or we can simply say that after 16 days or when the two half-life passes, the amount of iodine-131 atom has reduced to 1/4. From here, option D is correct.